There are moments in pop culture history that feel impossible to explain. Moments when the world loses someone who looked perfectly fine just days before. And in early 1983, America was forced into one of those moments. Because Karen Carpenter, a woman with one of the most flawless voices ever recorded, collapsed inside her parents' home and never got back up. Her death was labeled heart failure. But that explanation never satisfied doctors, journalists, or fans. And the 25-page coroner's report made something very clear. What killed Karen Carpenter didn't happen in one morning. It happened slowly, quietly, chemically, and biologically, over years. Tonight, we begin the reconstruction of that truth. This is of The Autopsy of Karen Carpenter. Karen Ann Carpenter was born on March 2, 1950, in New Haven, Connecticut. Her childhood was strict, structured, and deeply centered around one person, her older brother Richard. Richard was the prodigy, the musician everyone expected to succeed. Karen was the quiet, chubby kid, a girl who grew up hearing the nickname Fatso long before she ever stood in front of a microphone. When the Carpenter family moved to Downey, California in 1963, Karen found an escape in rhythm. She picked up drumsticks mostly to avoid physical education class, but she discovered a natural sense of timing and precision. And behind the drums, something else emerged. A voice, soft, warm, impossibly intimate. A voice that felt like it was speaking directly into your chest. By 1969, she and Richard officially formed the Carpenters, and the rise was immediate. Hits like Close to You, We've Only Just Begun, and Superstar pushed them into international superstardom. To the world, Karen was the girl next door, approachable, grounded, pure. But her public image and her private reality were already beginning to separate. Her family remained emotionally cold. Her marriage to real estate developer Thomas Burris collapsed. Her dream of becoming a mother faded when she learned he had undergone a vasectomy. And the new cultural obsession with extremely thin bodies, especially for female pop stars, created an invisible pressure she could not escape. This was the environment where her illness began. Before the public ever noticed a change, Karen had already started dieting in secret. At 5'4", she maintained a healthy 120 pounds. But one photograph changed everything. She saw herself as fat, and that moment became a psychological trigger she never recovered from. Her dieting quickly escalated into strategy, then manipulation, and eventually into self-destruction. From the Portuguese file, we know something shocking. Karen Carpenter consumed between 80 and 90 laxatives every single night. Not occasionally, not during a crisis. Every night, she hid the pills inside shoes, pillowcases, makeup bags, anywhere she thought people wouldn't look. Friends described finding them scattered like breadcrumbs throughout her home. But the most destructive habit came from the English file. Karen used ipecac syrup, a vomiting agent traditionally meant for poison emergencies. The active compound inside it, emetine, is uniquely dangerous. It creates microscopic scars in the heart. It thins the muscle fibers. And worst of all, it accumulates. The more you take, the more permanent the damage, and no one around her knew she was using it. Then came the final secret. Karen was also taking Synthroid, a synthetic thyroid hormone, in doses nearly 10 times higher than any medical guideline. She did not have a thyroid condition. She took it solely to increase her metabolism, to burn calories at a faster rate, even when she was already severely underweight. High doses of Synthroid can push the heart into extreme overdrive, up to 150 beats per minute. And as Karen's weight continued to drop, those doses became even more dangerous. By 1982, her physical decline was no longer a mystery. She appeared fragile, hollow, almost translucent in photographs. Her arms looked impossibly thin. Her face had lost almost all its fullness. But anorexia is deceptive, especially for the people living closest to it. Karen insisted she was fine. She told friends she was eating normally. She pushed food around her plate to make it look like she had finished a meal. And then came September of 1982, the moment her body finally gave out. She collapsed in New York and was rushed to Lenox Hill Hospital. Her weight was 77 pounds, roughly 35 kilograms. Her body had entered a state of emergency: severe dehydration, loss of muscle mass, electrolyte imbalance, organ stress on every system. Doctors immediately began hyperalimentation, feeding her intravenously to save her life. And in just weeks, she gained more than 30 pounds. To the public, and even to her family, Karen suddenly looked healthy again. But the coroner would later reveal the truth. Rapid weight gain does not repair a damaged heart. And Karen's heart had already undergone structural deterioration from years of starvation. When the human body runs out of fat and muscle, it begins consuming the internal organs. Her heart had literally shrunk. Its walls had thinned. Its ability to handle stress had collapsed. Meanwhile, she had abruptly stopped taking Ativan, her prescribed antidepressant. She should have taken 75 tablets by February 4th. 60 were still in the bottle. That meant Karen had skipped 5 full days of medication. A critical detail in understanding her emotional and physical state. In late January of 1983, she returned to her parents' home. She told friends she felt optimistic. She was planning a comeback, a new album, a new tour. But she also confided one frightening symptom. While fixing something under the sink, her heart felt like it was hammering out of her chest. This was not anxiety. This was the warning sign of an unstable cardiac electrical system. And then came the morning when everything stopped. February 4th, 1983 began with nothing unusual and ended with one of the most devastating losses in American music history. Karen woke early inside her parents' home in Downey, California. She had returned there recently, hoping to rest, rebuild her strength, and prepare for a musical comeback. She had been meeting with Richard, discussing future projects, even imagining a full return to touring. Visually, she looked better. Photographs from late January showed fuller cheeks, a healthier frame, and a spark that fans had not seen in years. But inside her chest, the damage was silent and irreversible. That morning, Karen mentioned to a friend that her chest felt tired, a vague but ominous description. It may have been fatigue or an early sign of electrical instability in her heart muscle, the same muscle that had been weakened by starvation, damaged by emetine, and stressed by years of metabolic manipulation. A little after 8 a.m., Karen walked to the kitchen to make coffee. This is a critical detail. It proves she was conscious, functional, and not in immediate distress. And then something catastrophic happened. Her heart likely slipped into a sudden arrhythmia, an electrical malfunction so violent and unpredictable that victims often collapse instantly without warning. Because when paramedics later examined her body, they found no signs of trauma, no bruises, no impact wounds, no defensive injuries. She didn't fall. She simply folded into the floor, the hallmark of an internal collapse. At 8:51 a.m., her mother discovered her unconscious. Emergency responders arrived within minutes. They detected only a faint, erratic pulse, described by witnesses as a single heartbeat every 10 seconds. This is a near-terminal rhythm. CPR continued for 28 minutes. Defibrillation, medicinal stimulation, repeated attempts to restore her heart's electrical pattern. Nothing worked. At 9:51 a.m., Karen Carpenter was officially pronounced dead. She was 32 years old. The world had lost a voice, but medicine had gained a mystery, and the autopsy that followed would reveal exactly why this healthy-looking woman collapsed that morning. The Los Angeles County coroner began a full forensic autopsy, knowing the world would scrutinize every conclusion. Fans had theories, tabloids had headlines, and even some doctors were unsure of the actual cause. But the truth would come from biology, not speculation. The heart, the organ that could not be saved. The first and most important finding: Karen Carpenter's heart was significantly smaller than normal. This condition, myocardial atrophy, occurs when the body breaks down muscle tissue during starvation. The heart, which is itself a muscle, shrinks to conserve energy. But that was only the beginning. Under microscopic examination, coroners found extensive damage to the cardiac fibers, patterns consistent with chronic exposure to emetine, the toxic compound in ipecac syrup. Emetine does not simply irritate the heart, it destroys muscle fibers. It creates microscopic lesions, it disrupts electrical conduction, and crucially, it builds up. Even after weeks without using ipecac, the damage remains. This combination of starvation shrinkage and emetine scarring created a deadly vulnerability. Her heart could beat, but it could not survive stress. It could not maintain rhythm, and it could not correct an electrical error once it began. This made sudden arrhythmia almost inevitable. The lungs, a sign of the final moments. Her lungs contained pink, frothy fluid, known medically as pulmonary edema. This is not the cause of death. It is the symptom of a heart that suddenly stops pumping effectively. Fluid backs up, pressure rises, the lungs flood. This finding is consistent with acute heart failure, occurring in the final minutes of her life. The stomach, a small but critical clue. Karen's stomach was almost empty. Not partially digested food, not liquids, not normal gastric contents. Instead, coroners found dry, tea-leaf-like particles, often associated with heavy laxative use or recent purging. This detail alone proved something important. Although Karen appeared to be eating dinner the night before, her body showed no trace of a normal meal. She had either vomited everything or expelled it through extreme laxative use. This behavior can trigger electrolyte disturbances, especially low potassium, which increases the risk of sudden arrhythmia. The liver, chemical proof of a hidden struggle. Toxicology revealed traces of emetine, confirming what friends and doctors suspected. Karen had been using ipecac in secret. Ipecac is deadly not because of one overdose, but because of repeated chronic exposure. It breaks the heart from the inside, slowly, irreversibly. And by 1983, the damage was permanent. The thyroid, the invisible factor. Synthroid, a synthetic thyroid hormone, does not leave detectable residues after death. But Karen's therapist confirmed she had been taking massive nightly doses, roughly 10 times stronger than the upper medical recommendation. High-dose synthroid forces the body into a hypermetabolic state, increased heart rate, increased demand for oxygen, increased electrical sensitivity. In a normal heart, this is dangerous. In Karen's heart, structurally weakened and chemically scarred, it was catastrophic. The reproductive system. An odd detail. Coroners found a normal corpus luteum cyst, meaning Karen was likely still menstruating. This is unusual in advanced anorexia, where menstruation often stops. It suggested that despite the appearance of improvement, her hormonal cycle had not fully recovered. Another indicator that the outward weight gain did not match internal healing. The toxicology report, the missing medication. Her Ativan prescription told another story. She should have taken 75 tablets. 60 were still in the bottle. Karen had abruptly stopped her antidepressant for roughly 5 full days. This would not directly stop her heart, but withdrawal can trigger emotional instability. Anxiety spikes, sleep disturbance, physiological stress, and stress in her condition could be fatal. After examining every organ, every tissue sample, every toxicology marker, the coroner concluded that Karen Carpenter's death was not caused by a single event. It was caused by 4 simultaneous biological disasters. 1. Severe cardiac atrophy. Years of starvation had shrunk and weakened her heart. 2. Irreversible cardiac toxicity. Chronic emetine exposure from ipecac had scarred her heart fibers, making arrhythmia almost unavoidable. 3. Metabolic overdrive from synthroid massive doses placed extreme strain on an already fragile heart. 4. Emotional and physiological vulnerability. Abrupt cessation of Ativan increased stress at a moment when her cardiovascular system could not handle any instability. Put together, it was a perfect medical storm. Karen Carpenter's outward appearance had improved. Her weight had increased. Her face looked healthier. Her plans were optimistic. But the internal damage, the damage no one could see, was already beyond repair. She didn't die because she was thin that day. She died because her heart had been biologically dismantled over years, until a single electrical misfire became impossible to survive. Karen Carpenter's voice defined an era, but her autopsy defined a new chapter in medical history. Her death forced the world to confront the silent brutality of eating disorders, conditions that were barely documented in the early 1980s, barely understood, and rarely treated with seriousness. Today, her story helps doctors recognize the hidden dangers of chronic purging, laxative dependency, and metabolic manipulation. Her medical file is still used in universities. Her case still saves lives. Karen Carpenter's songs were soft, warm, and impossibly human, and that humanity is what remains. The world lost her at 32, but her voice, her legacy, and the lessons from her autopsy continue to echo. And that is the truth. She never got the chance to speak. If you want to join me in more investigations like this one, you can support the channel by subscribing. It helps us bring stories that deserve to be understood, not forgotten.